lot of crazy stuff, especially in the playoff scenarios. In the AFC, we're not sure who's going to get the wild card spot. And the NFC, there's only 3 teams that are really fighting for it: the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Bears. So these are scenarios in the NFC. The Packers, the Seahawks, and the Saints, they all clinched their division, which means they're in the playoffs. It's a lock. Tampa clinched a playoff berth, so they're in the playoffs no matter what. These are the first round bye scenarios. The Packers will clinch a first round bye if they win or a Seattle loss. So if they win, they're in. They control their own destiny. The Saints can clinch it with a win plus a Green Bay loss and a Seattle win. And the Seahawks clinch it with a win, and they need Green Bay and the Saints to lose.
So Seattle has the tiebreaker over Green Bay?
Seattle, I think so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they probably do. But they need both the Saints and Green Bay to lose.
Yeah, because they're at 12-4 right now. The Saints are at 12-4, and the Packers are at 13-3. So
yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
The 3 games that these guys are going to play in, the Packers are going to face the Bears.
I'm sorry. That's the records that I have them projected to be at. I'm reading right now.
So the Packers are going to face the Bears week 17. The Bears are trying to fight to be in the playoffs as well. So there's probably not going to be a lot of starters resting because Green Bay wants that bye and the Bears want to get into the playoffs. The Saints and Panthers, which I think that should be an easy win for the Saints if they play their starters. And the Seahawks versus the 49ers, which is kind of a toss-up.
Yeah, and the tough thing about having any of these discussions is we don't know who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing. I think the only team we're pretty positive on who's not playing is the Rams with Jared Goff, and now Cooper Kupp is on the COVID list, so his status is up in the air. But all of these other teams, I'm going to assume that their starters are playing. I know the Steelers have also said they're starting Mason Rudolph, so we'll keep that in mind. But for teams that we don't know about, I'm just going to assume that their starters are playing.
Yeah, and what I think is weird about this season especially is that there isn't really much of an incentive for teams to want to play Week 17 if, one, they're not getting a first-round bye, or if they have to do too much to get a bye. Because I think because there's no fans, there's really no home field advantage per se. So it kind of lowers the incentive to get a higher seed and move up.
Like the Seahawks in any normal year, the 1 seed would be incredibly significant to them because that's the Seahawks are the 12th man. You know, that's the example.
Even Green Bay and the Saints, like Saints, the Superdome is one of the toughest places to play.
But you know, I think that it would probably be most important for the Packers just because that weather up there in Green Bay. You saw it this past Sunday. You know, anybody going into that atmosphere at Lambeau and whatever weather may be happening there. That's stuff that not a lot of teams have to deal with. So I feel like that could be an advantage to them more than even fans might be.
So I just searched it up. It's actually the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's where the Saints play. The Superdome,
Superdome.
The Superdome, I think, is the Falcons, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah, I think. I'm going to check it right now just because I'm curious.
Well, the Dome. I think everybody knew what you were talking about.
Falcon Stadium. The Falcon Stadium is the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And the Saints one is Mercedes-Benz Superdome. It is
Mercedes-Benz taking over the NFL.
Oh, man. That was really tricky.
Yeah.
So those are the first round bye scenarios. And now these are the wild card scenarios. The Cardinals make it into the playoffs if they win. They win and they're in because the Rams and them are both fighting for that wild card spot as well. So if they beat the Rams, they'll be fine. The Bears, they clinch with a win. They win and they're in. They can also clinch if Arizona loses. And the Rams clinch with a win or a tie or a Chicago loss. So from what I could take away from this is that all teams win and they're in. But the Bears own the tiebreaker over the Cardinals. So if the Bears and Cardinals both lose, they finish with the same record, the Bears are in the playoffs.
Wow.
Yeah, so all year long, the Bears have been kind of in a funk for this second half of the season mostly. The Cardinals have been struggling, but I thought the Cardinals were most certainly going to be a lock But
Yeah.
that can all change.
Yeah, and the Bears have actually looked pretty decent the past couple of weeks. Mitch Trubisky is starting to look like an NFL caliber quarterback again. I will say one thing that I am very grateful for is that they added another wild card spot because there's still going to be probably two teams sitting at home after this weekend that deserve a playoff spot, or maybe not deserve it, but could easily be a playoff team, one in the AFC, one in the NFC. And so if we would have had to miss two of these teams, like per se, you also had the Rams miss the playoffs, and in the AFC, you had the Colts or the Dolphins also miss the playoffs. It would have been a shame. So I'm glad they added that extra spot, and it's adding a little extra, little extra theater for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the games that they're going to play, of course, we talked about the Bears and the Packers. They're going to play against each other. A lot of stuff is really a lot of stuff is on that game. There's a lot of incentive to watch that game because a lot of is on the line. And then the Rams and Cardinals, Week 17. Jared Goff is probably not going to play. You mentioned Cooper Kupp. I think they just activated Blake Bortles from like a practice squad.
Yeah, from the Broncos practice squad.
And I think if they have Blake Bortles, look, I know that he hasn't been a good NFL quarterback, but he can have a good game. Like he can have a great game and lead them to victory.
I feel better about him than I actually forget his name.
Yeah, I think his last name's like Wolford.
Yeah.
Wolford, he played in the AAF. So, yeah, you feel way better about a guy who started in playoff games, made the AFC Championship, than a guy who's coming from the AAF. Like, Bortles is not a good quarterback, but he can have a great game.
Yeah, exactly. You saw what he did in Jacksonville. Although it was a flash in the pan, it seems like, he has that potential to come out and have a great game rather than, you're just rolling the dice with Wolford.
Yeah, so those are the scenarios for the wild card. So, basically, all teams win and they're in. Mostly because the Cardinals and the Rams play each other. So they win and they're in. But the other thing about this is that if the Rams lose and the Bears lose, then the Rams own that tiebreaker. So the Rams can lose. As long as the Bears lose, they'll be in the playoffs. And then we can see a scenario where the Cardinals and the Rams are both in the playoffs. Then the last scenario for the NFC East, the division is still up for grabs. Washington clinches with a win or a Dallas loss. The New York Giants clinch with a win plus a Washington loss, and the Cowboys clinch with a win plus a Washington loss as well.
So essentially, Washington is going to play. Well, Washington has the Sunday night game. The Giants and the Cowboys play at 4:30, I believe, 4:25, whatever it may be, at MetLife Stadium. Whoever wins that game is going to be watching that Washington football team game, because if Washington loses, whoever wins that Giants-Cowboys game is in. But if Washington wins, they're in.
And the Giants own the tiebreaker over Washington. So
it's reminiscent of that, was it the Bills who needed the Bengals to beat the Steelers to get into the playoffs, I think last year or 2 years ago? I think it might have been 2 years ago or last year when Andy Dalton
beat the Steelers. I think that might have been 2 years ago. I think that was either last year or the year where Tyrod Taylor was quarterback for the Bills.
And I just remember that video of the Bills going crazy in the locker room watching the Bengals get that upset victory. And then the Bengals played the Bills that year, and they had like a ceremony for Andy Dalton. Next season.
I mean, it's going to be a really tight race amongst all of these teams. I think the AFC is a bit crazier just because of that wild card. But, I mean, the Eagles are going to face Washington. And if Washington doesn't have a quarterback, that's going to be a tough game to win. And the Giants face the Eagles. The Giants face the Cowboys, my fault. Dallas doesn't own the tiebreaker over Washington. Only the Giants do. So if Dallas loses, then Washington is in, even if they lose the game. So,
okay.
Oh, wait, no. I think, because this says they clinch with a win or a Dallas loss. But I think the Giants own the tiebreaker, so I don't know.
It's going to be a crazy
It's really
Sunday.
weird. It's really weird.
And the cool thing is it's no Monday Night Football. It's no Thursday Night Football. So this is all going to be taking place on Sunday. It's going to be a lot to take in, but everything is going to happen Sunday night. We'll know who's in, who's not in, what the seating is. So it's going to be a great day.
So these are the scenarios for the NFC playoff race, the wild card, and the NFC East title. So now we're just going to give our prediction for who's going to win the wild card. We already know the first round buys, and honestly, if the team already is in the playoffs, we don't really care, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when they're in the playoffs, they lock their spot. We're talking about the teams that aren't in the playoffs. So in your opinion, in the NFC, who is going to take that wild card spot? The Bears, the Rams, or the Cardinals? Well, which two of those three teams are going to take it?
I'll say I got a lot of help on this one from ESPN. Has a great playoff machine that I've been using for years, and it helped me out with this because I was going back and forth between matchups. So if anybody wants to do this on their own, search up the ESPN playoff machine. It was a lot of fun playing around with different win and loss situations. But my wild card teams in the NFC, based on my predictions this weekend, I have the Buccaneers at 5, I have the Cardinals at 6, and I have the Rams at 7.
So you have the Bears missing the playoffs.
I do have the Bears missing the playoffs. I just think going up against Green Bay this weekend, the way the Green Bay has been playing, it's going to be too tough of a matchup, and I just can't see them winning that one. So I think that'll be their downfall.
Is the Green Bay game at what time is it?
I have the schedule up.
Because if it's a later game, then I see a scenario where Green Bay doesn't play their starters because the Saints might have lost or the Seahawks might have lost, and they're going to clinch that first round bye. Because they just need a Seattle loss to clinch the first round bye. Yeah. That's all they need.
So this week, that game is 4:25.
The Bears and the Packers.
Yeah.
What about the Seahawks game?
The Seahawks are also 4:25.
Okay, so both of them kind of have to play their starters. Look, this is tough for me because I'm kind of buying into the dream scenario or the fantasy that Mr. Trubisky is going to lead this team to the playoffs, and now the Bears front office is like forced into a dilemma of whether to re-sign him or not. Because I think there was a report that came out that if he makes the playoffs, they might re-sign him. And I mean, all they need to do to make the playoffs is they need Arizona to lose. Rams versus Arizona, it's a tough game. Look, this is my opinion. I would love for the Rams and Cardinals to both make the playoffs.
Yeah, same here.
But I think the Rams will beat the Cardinals.
Really?
Yeah, based on how their defense is playing. Kyler Murray's kind of hurt. He's hobbled. Jalen Ramsey versus DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like Ramsey will get the better of him in that matchup. And I just think their defense will come to show up. And look, call me crazy, but with Blake Bortles, Sean McVay, as creative as he is on offense, to make it easier on Blake Bortles, I think he doesn't have to do too much. And even as recently, Jared Goff has been playing really bad. And the thumb might have been affecting him these past few weeks, even though I've been seeing this inconsistent play from him for a while. But maybe Blake Bortles gives them another boost because that defense for the past few weeks has been looking at the offense and Jared Goff and been thinking, damn, like you cannot bail us out for nothing. So maybe Bortles brings a little life to them. I have the Bears making the playoffs with the Rams, and I think the Cardinals miss it.
So let me explain my reasoning. I am concerned about the Cardinals because I heard Cliff Kingsbury last night on SportsCenter. They were playing his interview, and he said that Kyler Murray, if he felt healthy enough, even if it meant he had to switch up his play style a little bit, he would be out there. But in my opinion, that's not a good thing because Kyler Murray, a lot of he's improved a lot this year as a player in general and as a passer. But he still, to me, is one of those guys that his legs open up so much for him in the passing game. And if he was just a pocket passer, he wouldn't be nearly as good of a player. I think that's pretty obvious. And so if you're going to put him just sit in the pocket all game, especially against that Rams defense, it's concerning. But on the other side, the Rams have to bring in Blake Bortles. You don't know what type of playing shape he's been in. When was the last time he started a game with the Jaguars? So you don't know what type of shape he's in. You got to teach him essentially, well, maybe not teach him an offense, but you got to figure out an offense that works in 4 or 5 days. So I'm personally going with the Cardinals just because I don't trust that offense to figure it out so quickly with whoever they throw out there at quarterback. If both teams were at full strength, I think it would have been a much more interesting matchup, and I might have went with the Rams, but I'm just concerned about that Rams offense and what they're going to be able to conjure up in a week. So that was my thinking on
Darrell Henderson is also on IR, so Cam Akers is probably going to start along with Malcolm Brown. He's probably going to get a bulk of the carries as well. The thing for me is that I have a gut feeling that the Bears will make the playoffs. That's just my gut feeling. I feel like that's going to happen. And I think the only way it happens, now is if the Cardinals lose, because I don't see the Bears beating Green Bay, especially if Green Bay's playing their starters. Green Bay always has the best of everybody in that division, whether it be the Vikings, whether it's Detroit. They always have the better of the opposing teams. And quite frankly, Green Bay is the number one team in the NFL and the NFC right now, and they're playing lights out. The one question mark we had about Green Bay all season and last season is, can they stop the run? And against Derrick Henry and the Titans, they did that.
Yeah,
they really neutralized them.
And it's not like the Bears have this crazy rushing attack. I mean, I don't think that
Trubisky has to win that game.
Exactly. It's going to come down. It's going to come down to what Trubisky does, and I personally don't trust him yet in a win-and-you're-in situation to put the team on his back like that. Can he do it with the way he's played the last 2 weeks? Lord only knows. I mean, he's looked really good, surprisingly out of nowhere. But last week it was against the Jaguars, so I'm kind of taking it with a grain of salt here. I'm going to firmly stand by the Packers win, the Cardinals win, and it'll be Rams 7, Cardinals 6, Bucks 5.